The royal court had gathered to watch a servant girl burn. Cold moonlight spilled through the shattered glass ceiling of Ashmere Keep, while snow drifted into the throne hall like pale ashes from a dying world. Nobles stood beneath towering black pillars, carved with ancient wolf gods, their silver cloaks brushing the marble floor as they whispered behind jeweled goblets. Soldiers lined the walls with drawn blades. Priestesses of the Moon Temple lowered their veils in silence. And at the center of the hall, chained in silver, knelt a servant girl with blood on her hands. The chains wrapped tightly around Alara Vale's wrists, biting into skin already raw from the oath marks burned there years ago. Her gray servant dress was stained with ash and royal blood. Dark strands of hair clung to her face where melted snow had touched her skin. She kept her eyes lowered, not because she was weak, but because every instinct she possessed screamed that looking up would destroy her. Above her, seated upon the throne of carved obsidian, Alpha King Kael Draven stared at her without blinking. The hall still smelled of smoke from the assassination attempt. Hours earlier, the kingdom had nearly lost its king. Now the court wanted someone to blame. Lord Varen stepped forward from the council dais, his iron staff striking the marble once. The sound echoed like a judgment bell. "This servant," he announced coldly, "used forbidden blood magic upon the Alpha King." Murmurs spread instantly through the court. Several nobles made warding signs against evil. One priestess whispered, "Moon curse." Ilara's stomach tightened. Forbidden healing magic was worse than murder in Vare. Murder ended life. Healing magic threatened power itself. The old stories claimed moon healers once controlled kings through blood-touching rituals. They whispered poison into royal veins, bent wolves to their will, destroyed dynasties from inside the throne room. Every child in the kingdom knew the punishment. Burn the healer before the moon rises again. Lord Varen descended the throne steps slowly, until he stood directly before Ilara. "You touched the king," he said. Ilara swallowed carefully. "Yes." Gasps rippled through the hall. No denial. No begging. No excuse. Only truth. Kael's gaze darkened slightly. Varen narrowed his eyes. "You admit it freely?" "I saved his life." The silence afterward felt dangerous enough to split stone. At the far side of the hall, Lady Seraphine gave a quiet laugh beneath her jeweled veil. "There," she murmured. "Even servants dream of becoming legends before they die." Several nobles smirked. Ilara kept her eyes down, not because the mockery hurt, because if she looked at Kael again, she feared she would remember the feeling of his blood against her hands, and that terrified her more than death. Hours earlier, the winter tribute feast had drowned in violence. Music still echoed through the hall when the first assassin struck. One moment, the court had been feasting beneath chandeliers of silver crystal. The next, blood sprayed across the royal table as a blade burst through the chest of Kael's captain. Chaos followed instantly. Wolves shifted mid-scream. Nobles fled. Torches crashed to the floor. Ilara had frozen beside the wine table as masked killers stormed the throne dais through hidden servant passages only palace insiders could know. The Alpha King fought like something born for war. Even wounded, Kael tore through assassins with terrifying precision, black claws ripping through armor, while golden eyes burned with pure violence. But then one assassin reached him. A poisoned blade slid between his ribs. Ilara saw it happen, saw Kael stagger, saw black veins instantly spread beneath his skin, saw fear flash across Lord Varen's face before the councilman hit it again. Poison. Royal poison. Not meant merely to wound, meant to kill the wolf itself. The assassins died quickly after that. Kael slaughtered the last one near the throne. But once the hall fell silent again, the king collapsed, and no one moved. Not the guards, not the council, not even Master Odrin, the royal healer, because every wolf in that hall knew the truth. The poison spreading through Kael's veins could not be cured. Then, Ilara broke the law. She ran to him. Even now she did not fully understand why. Perhaps because she had spent her life watching powerful men decide who deserved saving. Perhaps because she had grown tired of surviving quietly while others died loudly. Or perhaps because the moment Kyle hit the floor, something ancient inside her blood awakened. She remembered falling beside him, remembered black veins crawling beneath his skin like living shadows, remembered his breathing slowing, remembered everyone shouting at her to move away. Then Kale's eyes opened. Golden, fierce, dying, and somehow fixed entirely on her. "Don't," Master Odrin had shouted. But Alara had already touched the king. The moment her bare hand pressed against the wound beneath Kale's ribs, silver light exploded through the throne hall. Every torch extinguished instantly. The windows shattered. The wolves inside the palace howled in terror. And beneath Alara's skin, something burned awake. Not heat. Recognition. Ancien. Terrible. Royal. She had seen flashes then. A queen running through fire. Silver wolves kneeling in blood. A crying infant hidden beneath black cloaks. A king giving an execution order. No surviving daughter. Then darkness. When the vision ended, Kale inhaled sharply beneath her hands. The black poison veins retreated. Not gone, but weakened. Enough to save him. Enough to damn her. Now, kneeling before the throne with silver chains cutting her wrists, Ilara realized the court had already decided what she was. Not a servante. Not a girl. A threat. Lord Varen crouched before her slowly. "Where did you learn blood magic?" "I did not. You healed the king before 200 witnesses. I touched a wound." A few nobles laughed softly. Varen did not. His gaze remained fixed on her gloved right hand. "You wear gloves even while serving fires," he observed quietly. "Why?" Ilara's pulse quickened. Because beneath the glove was the mark. The mark she had hidden since childhood. The mark that had begun burning the moment she touched Kale. "I am oath-bound," she answered carefully. "That is not what I asked." Before she could react, Varen seized her wrist and ripped the glove away. The entire court inhaled sharply. A silver crest blazed beneath her skin. Not the thin servant oath. A royal symbole. A wolf beneath a crescent moon. Ancien. Forgotten. Impossible. The mark glowed brighter the instant moonlight touched it, and every wolf in the throne hall lowered their heads. Even the guards. Even the nobles. Even Coil. A priestess stumbled backward in horror. "The moon crown." "No," another whispered. "That bloodline died 20 years ago." Ilara stared at her own hand in shock. The crest had never burned this brightly before. Silver light crawled up her wrist like liquid moonfire. The chains around her hands began to tremble. Lord Varen stepped backward, for the first time that night. Kale rose slowly from the throne despite the pain still weakening him. His gaze never left Ilara. "What are you?" he asked quietly. Not cruelly, not accusing. Worse, like a man afraid of the answer. Ilara opened her mouth, and suddenly, the palace wolves began screaming, not howling, screaming. A sound of fear ripped through Ashmere Keep as thunder exploded outside. Then the great throne doors burst open. A wounded guard staggered inside, covered in blood. The northern gate. He collapsed. Behind him, black smoke poured into the hall, and from within the smoke came a voice. Cold. Male. Smiling. The hidden air finally wakes. The entire court turned toward the darkness, and KL stepped instinctively in front of Ilara. For the first time that night, the Alpha King chose where he stood, not beside his council, not beside the throne, beside her. The smoke pretending the doors carried the scent of blood, wet iron, and burned cedar. Every warrior in the hall shifted instantly into defensive formation. Steel rang free from sheaths. Low growls rolled across the chamber as wolves bared their teeth beneath human skin. But the figure standing beyond the smoke did not move. He simply watched, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a dark traveling cloak soaked by snow. His face remained hidden beneath the shadow of a hood, yet the pressure coming from him struck the room like winter pressing against a weak door. Ilara felt Kael step slightly closer in front of her, protecting her. The realization startled her almost as much as the stranger himself. Lord Varen lifted his staff sharply. "Name yourself." The man laughed softly. "Still barking commands while your kingdom rots, Varen?" Several council members stiffened immediately. Recognition. The stranger slowly lowered his hood. Silver scars crossed the left side of his face, cutting through a beard darkened with age. One eye remained wolf gold. The other had turned pale white long ago. General Theron Vale, the dead commander of the Western armies. Or rather, the commander everyone believed dead. Shock erupted across the throne room. "You traitor," one councilman hissed. Theron ignored him completely. His gaze locked onto Ilara. Not surprise. Not confusion. Grief. Deep enough to drown a kingdom. Ilara's breath caught. She had never seen the man before, and yet something inside her chest twisted painfully at the sight of him. Kael's voice turned deadly calm. "You disappeared 14 years ago. I survived. You abandoned your king." "No," Theron answered quietly. "I abandoned monsters wearing crowns." The hall exploded with furious shouting. Lord Varen slammed his staff against the floor hard enough to crack stone. "Seize him!" Guards rushed forward. Theron did not even draw a blade. Instead, he looked directly at Ilara. "Run." Then the palace exploded. A deafening roar tore through the eastern wall as black fire burst inward, sending nobles screaming across the hall. Stone shattered. Smoke swallowed the throne chamber. Wolves shifted midair as debris crashed around them. Kael grabbed Ilara instantly. The force of his arm around her waist stole her breath as he dragged her behind the throne platform just before burning beams collapsed where she had been kneeling seconds earlier. Heat rushed across her skin. Screams echoed everywhere. Assassins flooded the hall through the smoke. But these were not ordinary killers. Their wolves were wrong. Eyes entirely black. Veins dark beneath gray skin. The same corruption Ilara had seen beneath Kael's ribs. One of them lunged directly toward the throne. Kael met him with brutal force. Claws tore through flesh. Blood sprayed across the marble. Yet even after his throat ripped open, the assassin kept moving. Ilara stared in horror. "What is that?" Kael's voice came low beside her. "Dead wolves walking." Another assassin charged toward them. Kael shoved Ilara behind him and shifted partially mid-strike, black claws erupting from his hands as his wolf burst violently beneath his skin. The transformation should have looked powerful. Instead, it looked painful. Dark veins spread across his neck instantly. His breathing faltered. The curse. Every time his wolf surfaced, it consumed him further. Kael killed the attacker anyway, but afterward, he staggered hard enough to hit the throne steps. Ilara moved without thinking. "Don't shift again." Kael looked up sharply. "You command your king now? You'll die if you keep using your wolf." Something dangerous flickered through his eyes then. Not anger. Trust struggling against instinct. Before either could speak again, Lady Seraphine screamed. One of the corrupted wolves had seized her near the council dais. Nobles fled in panic. No one moved to help her. The assassin raised a blade, then suddenly froze. Every wolf in the room froze with him. A strange silver pulse spread across the throne hall. The torches dimmed. The moonlight intensified unnaturally, and all eyes turned toward Ilara. The crest on her wrist had begun glowing again. Bright silver. Ancien. Alive. The corrupted assassin trembled violently, as if resisting some invisible force. Then, impossibly, he released Lady Seraphine and dropped to one knee before Ilara. The entire court went silent. Even Kael stared. Ilara's heart pounded painfully. I didn't do anything, but deep inside, she felt something moving beneath her skin, something waking. The assassin looked up at her with black, ruined eyes. "The blood remembers," he whispered. Then, his body collapsed, dead. This time, permanently. A priestess, gasped in terror. Lord Varen's face had gone completely pale. And Kael Kael looked at Alara like the world beneath his feet had just shifted. The surviving assassins retreated seconds later, vanishing into the smoke as suddenly as they had appeared. The battle ended, but the silence afterward felt far worse. Bodies covered the throne hall. Broken banners smoldered. Snow drifted through the ruined eastern wall, while terrified nobles whispered the same words over and over. Royal bloodline. Moon heir. Impossible. Kael rose slowly despite the poison still burning through him. Clear the hall, he ordered. No one moved. The king's voice darkened instantly. I said clear the hall. This time they obeyed. Guards dragged bodies away. Council members retreated reluctantly. Lady Seraphine stared at Alara with naked hatred before disappearing through the western corridor. Only Lord Varen remained, and Theron Vale. The old commander stood near the broken wall, watching Alara with haunted eyes. Kael's attention shifted toward him sharply. You know her. Theron remained silent for several seconds. Then finally, yes. Alara felt cold spread through her chest. Kael's expression hardened dangerously. Explain. Theron looked at Alara again before speaking. 20 years ago, Queen Selene gave birth to a daughter. The throne room became perfectly still. Even the fire seemed to stop crackling. Kael's jaw tightened. The queen's child died. That, Theron answered quietly, is the lie your father built this kingdom upon. Alara stopped breathing. Lord Varen stepped forward instantly. Enough. Theron ignored him. The queen discovered King Aldrich planned to purge every remaining branch of the Moon bloodline. He feared the prophecy tied to their blood. Kael's eyes darkened. What prophecy? Theron hesitated. For the first time since entering the hall, fear crossed his face. The prophecy said the true heir of Moonblood would either save the kingdom or destroy the Alpha Throne forever. Silence followed. Heavy. Terrible. Then Kael asked the question Alara feared most. And the child? Theron looked directly at her. She survived. The world tilted beneath Alara's feet. No, she whispered immediately. Impossible. She was oath-bound. A servant. No family. No bloodline. No place. Theron's voice softened painfully. You were hidden after your mother died. Alara staggered backward. My mother was a laundress. No, Theron said. Your mother was Queen Selene of Vare. The words shattered something inside her. Memories flickered violently. Silver hair. Soft hands. A lullaby near firelight. Not dreams. Memories. Alara pressed trembling fingers against her forehead as pain exploded behind her eyes. Kael moved toward her instantly. Alara. She recoiled before he could touch her. Fear flooded her chest. Not fear of him. Fear of herself. The crest on her wrist suddenly flared brighter. The palace trembled. Outside, wolves across Ashmere Keep began howling again. Lord Varen's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. She cannot live. Everyone turned toward him. The councilman's face had become grim stone. If the border packs discover the Moon heir survived, civil war begins tomorrow. Kael's expression turned lethal. Choose your next words carefully. Varen met his gaze evenly. Your Majesty, the kingdom barely accepts your bloodline now. If she is revealed publicly, every rival alpha in Vare will claim the throne has become cursed. She saved my life. She carries the exact bloodline your father exterminated. Kael's wolf surged instantly beneath his skin. The torches darkened. You speak of my father carefully as well. But Varen did not back down. He ordered the purge, because the prophecy named a Moon heir as the ruin of the Alpha Kings. Alara stared at them in horror. Not because of the prophecy, because of one terrible realization. Kael's father had murdered her mother, and now Kael stood between her and the same throne. The room felt suffocating. Kael turned toward her slowly. Alara. His voice had changed. Still controlled. Still powerful. But beneath it, she heard conflict tearing through him. She looked at him, and suddenly saw everything differently. The king who carried his father's blood. The king whose touch awakened her crest. The king she had saved. The king she could never safely trust. Alara, he repeated quietly. Look at me." She did, and for one brief moment, neither of them looked away. The tension between them felt unbearable now. Not attraction. Not yet. Something more dangerous. Recognition. Fate pulling tight like a chain around both their throats. Then, Lord Varen destroyed the moment. The servant must be confined until the council decides her fate. Kyle's eyes never left Ilara. No. The single word froze the room. Varen stiffened. "Your Majesty, she remains under my protection." Shock spread instantly through the hall. Even Ilara stared at him. Protect her? Publicly? Against the council? Kale finally looked toward Varen, and the king's expression became terrifying. "Anyone who touches her without my permission," he said softly, "will answer to me personally." The threat settled over the throne room like approaching death. No one argued further. But as Kale turned back toward Ilara, she noticed something that chilled her completely. Black veins had spread farther across his throat. Saving him earlier had not cured the curse. It had only slowed it. And now every instinct inside her whispered the same terrifying truth. The Alpha King was still dying. And somehow, her blood was tied to his survival. The storm over Ashmere did not end with dawn. For 3 days, snow buried the outer roads, while black clouds strangled the sky above the fortress. Wolves refused to leave the inner walls. Horses screamed in the stables at night. Servants whispered that the dead queen's spirit had returned to claim the throne. And somewhere deep beneath the palace, hidden behind iron doors and guarded corridors, Ilara Vale sat alone beside a dying fire, while the kingdom argued over whether she should live. Kale had placed her inside the old moon tower. Not a dungeon. Not freedom either. The chamber overlooked the northern cliffs where dark forests stretched endlessly beneath winter fog. Ancient carvings covered the circular walls. Wolves kneeling beneath crescent moons. Queens crowned in silver flame. Symbols older than the Alpha Kings themselves. No servant had entered the moon tower in decades. That terrified Ilara more than chains would have. Because prisons were simple. This felt important. And importance was dangerous. She sat near the narrow hearth with a blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders, staring at the royal crest glowing faintly beneath her wrist. It no longer disappeared completely. Silver veins now curled subtly beneath her skin whenever moonlight touched her. The first night inside the tower, she had tried scrubbing the mark raw with salt water until blood covered the basin. The crest only glowed brighter. By the second night, she stopped trying. A quiet knock sounded against the tower door. Ilara instantly covered her wrist. The heavy lock turned. Kale entered alone. No guards. No council watchers. No royal cloak. Only black trousers, a dark shirt, and exhaustion carved sharply across his face. The tower seemed smaller the moment he stepped inside. More dangerous. Ilara rose automatically. "Your Majesty." His gaze moved briefly toward the blanket covering her wrist. "You don't need to hide it from me anymore." Her fingers tightened anyway. Kale closed the door behind him slowly. For several seconds, neither spoke. The silence between them had changed since the throne room. Before, it had carried curiosity. Now it carried truths. Neither knew how to survive. Finally, Kale crossed toward the fire. "You haven't eaten." "I'm not hungry." That was not a question. "I know." A faint flicker crossed his mouth. Not quite amusement, but close enough to unsettle her. Kyle removed a small wrapped bundle from beneath his cloak and placed it beside the hearth. Bread. Dried meat. Winter berries. Ilara stared. A king brings food to servants now. A king keeps alive the woman who saved him. The warmth in the room suddenly felt dangerous. Ilara looked away quickly. "You should not have protected me in the throne hall." Kyle leaned one hand against the stone mantle. "The council wanted you dead before sunrise." "They still do." "Yes." The blunt honesty startled her. Kyle never softened truth when it became uncomfortable. Perhaps because kings who lied too often eventually believed themselves. "Ilara," he said quietly, "tell me what you remember." Her throat tightened. "Nothing useful. You saw memories when you touched me." "Fragments." "What fragments?" She hesitated too long. Kyle noticed immediately. "You're afraid." "Shouldn't I be?" His expression darkened slightly. That depends what you saw. The fire crackled softly between them. Outside, wind howled against the tower walls. Finally, Alara whispered, "Your father ordered my mother killed." Kyle went still. Not surprised, not defensive, just tired. Like a man hearing a truth he had already feared. "You believe it?" "I saw it." He looked toward the storm outside the narrow windows. "My father ordered many deaths. He murdered a queen. He murdered anyone who threatened the throne." The bitterness beneath his voice caught her off guard. Alara studied him carefully. "You hated him." Kale laughed once. Cold, sharp. "My father believed fear was the only thing keeping kingdoms alive." His gaze shifted back toward her. "By the time I was 10, I knew he feared one thing more than rival packs. The Moon bloodline." "Yes." Alara looked down at her wrist again. Silver light pulsed faintly beneath the skin. "Why?" Kyle was silent for a moment. Then slowly, "Because Moonblood once ruled wolves before Alpha Kings existed." The tower suddenly felt colder. Kale moved closer to the firelight, shadows cutting across his face. The first rulers of Vaer were not war kings. They were called moon sovereigns. Wolves followed them willingly, not through fear, through blood bonds stronger than Alpha commands. Alara listened despite herself. "My father believed that bloodline could take the throne back one day, and now he was right." Kale's eyes locked onto hers. "Was he?" The question settled painfully between them. Alara didn't know anymore. 3 days ago she had been invisible. Now ancient wolves howled beneath her window every night. 3 days ago Kyle had been only her king. Now every time he entered a room, the mark beneath her skin reacted. She hated how aware she had become of him. The controlled violence in the way he moved. The exhaustion hidden beneath command. The dangerous restraint in his eyes whenever he looked at her too long. And worse, how safe she felt when he stood near. That frightened her more than anything. Kyle broke the silence first. "Theron says your mother hid you before the purge." Alara swallowed carefully. "Why didn't he save her too?" Pain flickered briefly across Kale's face. He tried. The answer stunned her. Kale exhaled slowly. "My father executed half the royal guard during the purge. Theron disappeared afterward, because everyone believed he helped the queen escape." "And did he?" Kale looked directly at her. Yes. The truth hit harder than she expected. Someone had fought for her mother. Someone had died, trying to protect her. For years, Alara believed she came from nothing. Now the ghosts of an entire bloodline seemed to rise behind her. Before she could speak again, Kale suddenly stiffened. A sharp breath escaped him. Ilara's attention snapped upward instantly. The black veins had returned, darker now, crawling slowly beneath the skin near his throat. Kyle turned away sharply. "Don't." But Alara had already stepped closer. "You're worse. I'll survive." "That isn't survival." His jaw tightened. The curse pulsed visibly beneath his skin now, twisting through him like living poison. For the first time, Alara saw genuine strain crack through his control. Kale gripped the stone mantle hard enough to splinter it. "Leave it. You can barely stand." "I said leave it." His alpha voice rolled through the room instinctively. Powerful, commanding, enough to force most wolves into obedience. But Alara wasn't truly wolf, and somehow, his command never fully worked on her. Instead, she moved closer. Kale looked at her sharply. "Alara." Fear moved through her chest. Not fear of him hurting her. Fear of what happened every time she touched him. The visions. The bond growing stronger. The terrifying feeling that some ancient force already considered them connected. Still, she removed her glove slowly. Silver light immediately crawled across her wrist. Kale stared at the glowing crest with visible tension. "You don't understand what this is doing to us." "No," she admitted softly. "But I understand watching someone suffer." For one dangerous second, neither moved. Then Alara touched him. The moment her hand pressed against the dark veins beneath his throat, power exploded through the tower. The fire surged silver. Ancient symbols carved into the walls ignited with moonlight, and Kale's entire body went rigid beneath her hand. Ilara gasped sharply. The vision hit harder this time. A battlefield drowned in blood. Kyle, standing alone beside burning banners. His wolf, enormous, monstrous. Black veins consuming half his body. A voice whispering, "Your true mate will either save the king or finish destroying him." Then another image. A younger Kale, kneeling before King Aldrich. His father, a brutal-faced ruler with cold golden eyes. "You are not permitted weakness," Aldrich said. Young Kyle's hands shook from hidden pain. "My wolf is failing. Then chain it before the court smells weakness in your blood." The vision shattered violently. Ilara stumbled backward, breathing hard. Kyle caught her before she fell. The instant his hands closed around her waist, both froze. Too close, far too close. Ilara could feel his heartbeat. Strong, dangerous, slowing beneath her magic. Kale looked down at her with an expression she had never seen before. Not command, not suspicion. Need. Not merely for healing, for here. The realization struck both of them at once. Kale released her instantly. The distance hurt more than it should have. Silence filled the tower again. Heavy, breathing, alive. Then suddenly, a howl echoed outside the tower. Not ordinary. Ancien. Every wolf in Ashmere answered immediately. Kale turned sharply toward the window. Ilara's crest flared painfully. Then the tower doors burst open. Theron entered with blood across his armor. "The council moved early," he said urgently. Kale's expression darkened instantly. "What happened?" Theron looked directly at Ilara. "They've arrested 3 servants who helped raise you." Cold flooded her chest. "They're accusing them of hiding royal blood." Kyle swore under his breath. Theron continued grimly. "Lord Varen called an emergency council vote." Ilara's stomach dropped. "For what?" Theron's face hardened. "To execute the moon heir before the kingdom learns she exists." And somewhere deep below the tower, the execution bells began ringing. The execution bells rang across Ashmere. Keep like the voice of a grave opening beneath the kingdom. One strike. Then another. Deep. Slow. Merciless. The sound rolled through the storm-dark fortress and into the forests below, where wolves answered with restless howls. Torches ignited across the lower courtyards as soldiers rushed through snow-covered passageways. Servants hid behind doors. Noble families gathered inside private chambers to whisper predictions about civil war. And in the moon tower, Ilara Vale felt terror settle cold and sharp beneath her ribs. Not for herself. For the people who had once shown her kindness. 3 servants arrested. Interrogated because of her. Possibly executed. The old cook who hid bread for hungry children. The laundry woman who stitched winter gloves for Ilara after seeing the burns on her hands. The stablemaster who pretended not to notice strange wolves following her at night. All of them now trapped beneath the council's reach. Kale's expression darkened as the bells continued. They moved faster than expected. Theron gave a grim nod. Varen fears the border pacts will learn the truth before he controls the story. He already lost control of the story the moment the court saw her mark. Kale looked toward Ilara then, and the air changed instantly. The tension between them had become impossible to ignore now. Not soft, not safe. It moved like a storm gathering beneath every conversation, every glance, every silence stretched too long. Ilara hated how aware she had become of him. The roughness in his voice, when exhaustion wore through control. The way his wolf reacted, whenever another man stood too close to her. The terrible restraint in his eyes every time their skin touched. It frightened her because she understood exactly how dangerous it was. A king tied to the surviving heir of the bloodline his father destroyed. A bond like that could destroy kingdoms. Theron interrupted the silence. The council convenes within the hour. Kael's jaw tightened. They won't execute anyone yet. They only need fear to spread first, Theron replied. Once the nobles panic, they'll force the court to demand blood. Ilara stepped forward suddenly. Then let me go. Both men looked at her sharply. If I leave Ashmere, the council loses its excuse. No, Kale said instantly. The force in his voice startled even her. Elara lifted her chin. People are suffering because of me. They are suffering because weak men fear what they cannot control. And what if they're right to fear it? Silence. The silver mark beneath her skin pulsed faintly. KL moved toward her slowly. You healed poison that should have killed me. You don't know what else I might become. His gaze lowered briefly toward her glowing wrist, then returned to her eyes. Yes, he said quietly. I do. The words struck harder than they should have. Elara looked away first, because part of her wanted to believe him. And that was becoming the most dangerous thing of all. KL turned toward Theron again. Prepare the inner guard. No council authority enters this tower without my order. Theron hesitated slightly. Then, carefully, you cannot protect her forever. KL's expression hardened. I only need to protect her long enough. For what? Kaya looked toward Elara again, and for one brief moment, something almost vulnerable crossed his face. To learn whether the kingdom has been lying to itself for 20 years. The tower fell silent again. Then Kaya left. The moment the doors closed behind him, the room felt colder. Elara stared into the fire without speaking. Theron remained near the entrance for several seconds before finally removing his cloak. Snow dusted the dark leather armor beneath it. Old scars crossed his hands. He looked like a man who had spent years surviving wars he no longer believed in. You have her eyes, he said quietly. Elara stiffened. My mother's? Theron nodded once. The ache inside her chest deepened unexpectedly. She had spent her life imagining faceless parents she barely remembered. Now those ghosts suddenly had shape. Voice. Blood. Bine. She died because of me, Elara whispered. No. Theron's answer came instantly. She died because powerful men feared her bloodline. Elara looked toward the tower windows where snow struck the glass like pale ash. What was she like? For the first time since arriving at Ashmere, the old commander smiled faintly. Queen Selene could calm wolves without raising her voice. His gaze softened with memory. Even the cruel ones. Elara swallowed hard. She sounds nothing like me. Theron looked directly at her. You touched a dying king while every noble in the kingdom stood frozen in fear. His voice lowered. You are more like her than you know. Emotion tightened painfully in Elara's throat. Before she could answer, another howl echoed outside. Closer this time. Wrong somehow. Theron's expression instantly darkened. That's not palace guard. The tower doors burst open again. A wounded soldier stumbled inside, blood running down his neck. My lord. He collapsed to one knee. Theron caught him immediately. Speak. The lower cells. Attacked. Elara's stomach dropped. The servants? The guard looked toward her with fear in his eyes. Someone slaughtered the prison wardens. Cold spread through the room. Theron's grip tightened. Who? The soldier's face had gone pale. They weren't wolves. Silence. Then, black eyes, he whispered. Like corpses walking. The corrupted wolves. Kael's cursed enemies. They were inside the palace again. Theron rose immediately. Stay here. Elara stepped forward. If the servants are still alive, you are the reason the attackers came. And hiding changes nothing. Theron stared at her for a long moment, then finally swore beneath his breath. Stay behind me. The lower prison tunnels beneath Ashmere smelled of blood and wet stone. Torches flickered wildly as Theron led Elara downward through winding corridors guarded by tense soldiers. Bodies already covered the stairwell. Some wore council armor. Others belonged to prison guards torn apart so violently it barely looked human. Elara forced herself not to look too closely. Ahead, shouting echoed through the cell blocks. Then came a roar. Not human. Not wolf either. Theron drew his sword instantly. Elara, behind me. They entered the prison chamber just as another guard slammed into the far wall hard enough to crack stone. The thing standing over him had once been a wolf. Now, black veins consumed nearly its entire body. Its jaw hung unnaturally wide. Its eyes were empty darkness, and chained behind the creature, 3 servants knelt against the wall. One of them was old Mara from the kitchens. Her terrified eyes found Alara immediately. "Child, run!" The corrupted beast lunged. Theron intercepted it with brutal force, steel crashing against claws as soldiers rushed forward. The creature moved impossibly fast, ripping through armor while black blood sprayed across the prison floor. But Alara barely saw the battle, because the beast had stopped attacking for one strange heartbeat after seeing her, as if it recognized her. The silver crest beneath her wrist suddenly blazed painfully. The creature turned toward her fully, and then, to everyone's horror, it bowed. The entire prison chamber froze. Even Theron stopped moving. The corrupted wolf lowered its head before Alara, like a servant kneeling before royalty. A whisper slithered through the room. The blood remembers. Alara stepped backward in terror. "I didn't do this." The beast lifted its ruined face toward her. Then another voice echoed through the corridor behind them. Cold. Female. Amused. "Oh, but you did." Everyone turned sharply. Lady Seraphine stood at the prison entrance dressed in silver furs, untouched by blood, despite the chaos surrounding her. Several council guards followed behind her, and beside her, Lord Veron. Alara instantly understood. This wasn't rescue. It was a trap. Veron's gaze swept across the kneeling, corrupted beast, then toward Ilara's glowing mark. His expression became grim satisfaction. "There," he said quietly. "Now the kingdom will finally see what she truly is." Theron stepped protectively in front of Alara. "You staged this?" Seraphine smiled faintly. "No," she replied softly. "We simply allowed the monster to reveal its queen." Rage exploded through Alara's chest. Not because they feared her, because innocent people nearly died just to expose her publicly. The corrupted wolf suddenly lunged again, not toward soldiers, toward Alara. Theron moved instantly, but before the beast reached her, a massive black wolf crashed through the prison doors. Coil, his full wolf form towered above the chamber like a creature dragged from ancient nightmares. Black fur, golden eyes, claws stained with blood. Terrifying, beautiful, dying. The curse spread visibly beneath his fur now, like moving shadows. With a savage roar, Kael tore into the corrupted beast. Stone cracked beneath their weight. The prison erupted into chaos again, and Alara realized, with horror, Kael had shifted fully, which meant the curse inside him had just grown stronger again. The black wolf finally ripped the corrupted creature's throat apart. Silence crashed through the prison afterward. Kael stood over the corpse, breathing heavily, too heavily. Then suddenly he staggered. Blood hit the stone floor beneath him. Ilara's heart stopped. The curse veins spread rapidly beneath his fur. The great black wolf collapsed, and every person in the prison chamber turned toward Alara at the exact same moment. Because everyone suddenly understood the same terrible truth. Only she could save him now. For one frozen heartbeat, nobody moved. The prison chamber stood buried beneath silence and torch smoke, while the Alpha King of Ver lay bleeding across cold stone. The great black wolf struggled to rise once, failed. Dark veins pulsed violently beneath his fur like poison crawling through living shadows. Then Kael let out a low, ragged sound that barely resembled a growl anymore. It sounded like pain. Real pain. The kind no king was ever allowed to show. Ilara's body moved before thought could stop her. She ran toward him. "Don't touch him," Lord Veron barked instantly. Too late. Ilara dropped beside the fallen wolf, as soldiers raised weapons around her. Fear crashed through her chest the moment she saw how far the curse had spread. Black corruption twisted beneath Kael's skin all the way to his throat now, pulsing with every weakened heartbeat. He was dying faster this time. Because he shifted. Because he protected her. Because every time his wolf surfaced, the curse consumed another piece of him. Kael's golden eyes opened slightly as Alara reached for him. Even now, half-conscious and barely breathing, his wolf calmed the instant she touched his fur. The entire prison chamber noticed. Lady Seraphine's expression darkened immediately. Theron stepped beside Ilara with sword drawn while council guards shifted uneasily around them. "Ilara," he warned quietly, but she already knew. If she healed Kael publicly again, there would be no hiding what she was afterward. No returning to servant shadows. No escaping the kingdom's fear. The moon air would become real, visible, dangerous. And yet Kael's breathing weakened beneath her hand. Ilara closed her eyes. Then she removed the second glove. Silver light burst instantly through the prison chamber. Gasps echoed from every direction. The hidden mark beneath her left wrist ignited like moonfire, matching the crest on her right hand now. Ancient silver symbols spread upward along her arms beneath the skin, glowing brighter with every heartbeat. The air itself changed. Wolves throughout the prison lowered their heads instinctively. Even the soldiers backed away. Ilara pressed both hands against Kael's chest, and the vision struck harder than ever before. She saw a child standing alone in a throne room filled with blood. Young Kael, barely 13. His father towering above him while black veins spread beneath the boy's skin for the first time. "You will rule even if the curse devours you," King Aldrich said coldly. Young Kael trembled violently. "It hurts." Then learned silence. The vision shifted. Years later, Kael, older now, standing over the body of a woman wearing Luna white. Her throat torn open, betrayal in her dead eyes. A voice whispered, "Never trust the bond. Love makes kings weak enough to kill." Then, another image. Kael alone at night beside a cliff edge, claws digging into stone while he whispered a prayer no one heard. "Please, just let my wolf survive one more winter." The vision shattered violently. Ilara gasped sharply as silver power erupted from her hands. Moonlight exploded through the prison chamber. The black veins beneath Kael's fur recoiled instantly. Soldiers staggered backward, shielding their eyes. Ancient wolf carvings along the prison walls began glowing. And then something impossible happened. The dead wolves buried beneath Ashmere Keep howled. The sound rose through the stone beneath everyone's feet. "Ancien, terrible, awake." Several priestesses screamed. "The old blood." "Ilara," Theron shouted, but she could barely hear him. The power pouring through her no longer felt human. It felt ancient, endless, like something sleeping beneath her blood had finally opened its eyes. Kael suddenly shifted back into human form beneath her hands. The transformation hit violently. 1 second fur and claws. The next, a man breathing hard beneath silver moonlight. Kael's chest rose sharply as the black veins retreated from his throat. Not gone, but weakened again. Alive. Ilara swayed from exhaustion immediately afterward. Kael caught her before she collapsed. His hand closed around her waist while the other gripped her wrist tightly where the glowing crest burned bright beneath silver light. The prison chamber stared at them in stunned silence. Because the moment Kael touched her, the king's royal mark ignited too. A black wolf crest blazed beneath the skin over his heart, and silver moonlight spread between their marks like living threads. The mate bond. Ancien. Forbidden. Visible. Every wolf in the room felt it instantly. Lady Seraphine went pale with fury. Lord Varen looked horrified. Theron simply closed his eyes briefly, as though a feared truth had finally arrived. Kael stared at Ilara, like the world itself had just betrayed him. "No," he whispered. The silver connection between them pulsed brighter. Ilara's heart dropped. She had heard stories of mate bonds her entire life. Sacred, violent, soul deep. But this felt different. Older, dangerous in ways the kingdom had forgotten. Kael released her suddenly as though touching her burned. The rejection cut deeper than it should have. "Ilara." His voice sounded rough now, unsteady. "Go back to the tower." Silence crashed down around them. Even wounded and shaken, he still sounded like a king. But Ilara saw the fear hidden beneath it. Not fear of her hurting him. Fear of what their bond meant. Lady Seraphine stepped forward immediately. "Your Majesty," she said carefully. "The court must witness this." Kael's expression turned lethal. "No, The kingdom deserves truth. The kingdom deserves survival. Seraphine's eyes shifted toward Alara with quiet hatred. A servant girl carrying forbidden moon blood just revealed a royal mate bond before half the palace. Ilara's chest tightened painfully. Servant girl. Even now. Even after everything. Kale moved between them instantly. Watch your tongue. The possessiveness in his voice shocked everyone, including him. Silence followed. Then Lord Varen spoke carefully. The bond changes everything. Kael's gaze sharpened dangerously. Explain. Varen hesitated. Then, finally, the old prophecies warned the moon heir would bind herself to the last cursed alpha. Cold spread through Ilara's chest. The last cursed alpha? She whispered. Theron looked grim. There has never been a cure for the royal blood curse. Kael's jaw tightened. Varen continued quietly. According to the prophecy, either the moon heir saves the Alpha King, he looked toward Alara, or she becomes the reason the throne falls forever. The prison chamber fell silent again. Outside, thunder shook the fortress. Kael looked at Alara, with conflict burning openly in his eyes now. The bond between them pulsed painfully. Neither understood it fully, but both felt it. The pull, the recognition, the terrifying certainty that fate had tied them together long before they met. And somewhere deep inside herself, Alara realized the truth she feared most. Part of her wanted him anyway, despite the throne, despite the blood between their families, despite knowing his father murdered her mother. That realization frightened her enough to step backward. Kael noticed instantly. Pain flickered briefly across his face, then vanished behind control. Take her back to the tower, he ordered quietly. Theron nodded once. But before anyone moved, Lady Seraphine suddenly smiled. A slow, beautiful, cruel smile. Oh, she said softly. I don't think the court will allow that anymore. The prison doors slammed open. Dozens of nobles flooded inside alongside council guards and moon priestesses. Word had spread faster than fire. They had all seen the silver light. All heard the dead wolves howl. And now every eye fixed upon Alara like she was either salvation or disaster. A priestess pointed directly at her. The moon heir has awakened. Another noble spat near the floor. She bewitched the king. She carries cursed blood. She healed him. She controls corrupted wolves. Silence. Kael's voice shook the prison chamber hard enough to silence everyone instantly. The Alpha King stood fully now, despite exhaustion clawing at him. Blood still stained his chest. Black veins lingered faintly beneath his throat. Yet he looked more dangerous than anyone else in the room. And then, to everyone's shock, Kael stepped beside Alara. Not in front. Beside. An equal position. The political meaning struck the room instantly. Lady Seraphine's face went white with fury. Lord Varen stared carefully at the king. Kael's expression remained carved from stone. No one, he said coldly, will touch her. A council noble stepped forward, trembling. Your Majesty, she may destroy the throne. Kael's golden eyes darkened. Then the throne should pray she remains merciful. The entire prison chamber froze, because for the first time, the Alpha King of Vare had publicly chosen her side, and somewhere deep beneath Ashmere Keep, ancient wolves began howling again, this time not in fear, in recognition. By dawn, the entire kingdom knew. The moon heir had returned. No walls in Ashmere Keep could hold news born from fear. Servants whispered through kitchens. Guards carried rumors between towers. Noble messengers rode through the storm before sunrise, with sealed letters warning rival pacts that forbidden royal blood now stood beside the throne of Vare. And at the center of it all, Ilara sat alone in the moon tower, while the kingdom decided whether she was a queen or a curse. The silver marks beneath her skin no longer faded at all now. Thin glowing veins curled softly across both wrists, whenever she breathed too hard or thought too deeply about Kael. The mate bond pulsed faintly inside her chest like a second heartbeat she could not silence. Every time she remembered his hand catching her in the prison chamber, it burned stronger. Ilara hated that, hated the weakness of it. because this was not some soft story sung by traveling bards. This was blood, politics, a throne built on her mother's death. And Kale carried the blood of the man who destroyed her family. A knock sounded against the tower door. Ilara instantly straightened. Into. Theron stepped inside, carrying a folded dark cloak. You'll need this. Her stomach tightened immediately. For what? The council demanded a public tribunal. Of course they had. Fear always preferred audiences. Ilara looked toward the tower windows where snow still covered the cliffs below Ashmere. To decide if I live? Theron's silence answered clearly enough. He crossed the chamber and handed her the cloak. Heavy black wool lined with silver fur. Not servant clothing. Noble clothing. Ilara stared at it uneasily. I shouldn't wear this. You're no longer invisible enough for servant Grey. The words hurt more than they should have. Invisible. For years she had hated it. Now she almost missed it. Theron watched her carefully for a moment, before speaking again. The court will provoke you today. Ilara gave a bitter laugh. That seems to be their favorite sport. This is different. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. They want fear. If they can convince the nobles you are unstable, cursed, or dangerous. His jaw tightened. The council will force Kale to surrender you. At the mention of Kale, the bond inside her chest pulsed again. Ilara looked away quickly. Theron noticed. Has the bond strengthened? She hesitated. Yes. How much? Ilara swallowed carefully. I feel him. The old commander's expression darkened slightly. How? Pain, mostly. Her voice softened unwillingly. Anger. Exhaustion. And something else she did not dare say aloud. Loneliness. Kale carried loneliness, like a second skin. Even surrounded by wolves' power and loyalty, some part of him remained utterly isolated. Perhaps kings always lived that way, or perhaps cursed men did. Theron exhaled slowly. The old mate bonds were never gentle. His eyes shifted toward the glowing marks on her wrists. But this one, he shook his head faintly. It feels older. Before Ilara could answer, the tower doors opened again. Tile entered. The room changed instantly. Not loudly, not dramatically, just completely. His presence carried tension the way storms carried thunder beneath clouds. Dressed entirely in black, with his silver-clasped cloak falling heavily across broad shoulders, he looked every inch the feared Alpha King the kingdom believed untouchable. Except Ilara noticed the truth immediately. He looked tired. The curse beneath his skin had retreated after the prison healing, but not vanished. Faint black veins still lingered near his throat, like shadows refusing to die. And the moment his eyes met hers, the mate bond ignited painfully between them. Kyle felt it too. His jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. Theron quietly moved toward the door. The council waits. Kale nodded once. When the old commander left, silence settled heavily through the tower chamber. Ilara folded her arms instinctively. You should not be here alone. A faint shadow crossed his face. You sound like my generals. You nearly died last night. I nearly die every week. The blunt honesty startled her again. Kale stepped closer slowly. The silver marks on Ilara's wrists brightened instantly, in response. His gaze dropped toward them, then lower, toward her trembling hands. You're afraid of the bond. Yes, so am I. Her breath caught. Kale rarely admitted fear. Perhaps never. But now, she saw it clearly beneath his control. Not fear of weakness. Fear of needing something he could not survive losing. Ilara, he said quietly. When the tribunal begins, the council will demand proof that you control the corrupted wolves. I don't. I know. His eyes darkened. They won't care. She looked away briefly. What happens if the nobles believe them? Kale's voice became colder. Then half the kingdom calls for your execution, while the other half tries to place a crown on your head. And you? The question escaped before she could stop it. Kyle went silent. The bond between them pulsed once. Heavy. Dangerous. Finally he answered, I don't know what you are yet. The words should have hurt. Instead, they felt honest. More honest than promises would have. Elara nodded faintly. At least you admit it. Kale stepped closer again. Too close. You terrify my council. I'm beginning to understand why. No. His voice lowered dangerously. They fear power. His gaze held hers completely now. I fear what happens to me when you bleed. The air vanished from her lungs. For one impossible second, neither moved. Elara became painfully aware of everything. His scent of winter smoke and iron. The rough scar crossing his throat. The restrained hunger in the way his wolf watched her. And beneath it all, the terrifying certainty that if he touched her now, she might not pull away. A knock shattered the moment. Your Majesty, a guard called from outside. The tribunal begins. Kyle's expression hardened instantly back into that of a king, but before he turned away, his hand brushed lightly against Elara's wrist. Just once, barely a touch. Silver light flashed beneath both their skin, and Kale looked genuinely shaken by how much he felt it. The royal tribunal gathered inside the Hall of Fangs, the oldest chamber beneath Ashmere Keep. Massive stone wolf statues lined the circular hall, while black banners hung between burning braziers. Noble houses filled the elevated galleries above. Priestesses stood in silent rows beside the council dais. Warriors guarded every entrance with hands resting on drawn blades. The atmosphere felt less like judgment, more like war waiting for permission to begin. When Kale entered beside Elara, the entire chamber erupted into whispers. Not because she wore noble clothing now, because the Alpha King walked beside her openly. Not ahead, not behind, beside. Lady Seraphine sat near the council platform dressed in silver silk, beautiful as winter frost and twice as cold. Her eyes fixed on Elara immediately, with thinly veiled hatred. Lord Varen rose from the central dais. Let the tribunal begin. His voice echoed heavily through the chamber. 3 nights ago, a servant girl revealed forbidden healing abilities within the royal court. Since then, ancient blood marks have awakened. Corrupted wolves have bent before her, and the Alpha King himself has formed a visible bond with her bloodline. Murmurs spread instantly. Varen continued. The kingdom now demands truth. His gaze shifted directly toward Elara. State your name before the court. Elara Bali. Your bloodline. She hesitated only briefly. I do not fully know it. A council lord slammed his fist against stone. Lies. Kyle's eyes darkened immediately, but Varen raised one hand carefully. Then, perhaps the relic beneath the throne may answer instead. The hall fell silent. Even Kyle stiffened slightly. Elara frowned. What relic? No one answered her immediately. Instead, 2 guards dragged forward, a massive iron chest covered in ancient moon symbols, thick chains wrapped around it. Priestesses approached carrying silver torches, while the nobles leaned forward in anticipation. Fear twisted through Elara's stomach. The chest opened. Inside rested a crown. Not gold. Silver. Beautiful and terrible. The moment Elara saw it, the marks beneath her skin ignited painfully. The Moon Crown. Ancient relic of the bloodline King Aldrich exterminated. The entire chamber watched her carefully now. Varen spoke quietly. The crown answers only true royal moon blood. Kyle stepped forward instantly. Enough. But the priestesses had already lifted the relic. Silver power filled the hall. Elara's breathing quickened involuntarily. Something inside her blood recognized the crown. Wanted it. No, Kale said sharply. Too late. The moment the crown rose fully into moonlight, every wolf in the Hall of Fangs dropped to one knee, including the guards, including the council warriors. Even several rival alphas in the gallery bowed instinctively before realizing what they had done. Shock exploded through the chamber, because Elara remained standing at the center of it all, and above her, the moon crown began floating toward her on its own. The Hall of Fangs descended into chaos. Nobles surged to their feet, shouting over one another while the silver crown floated slowly through the air toward Elara, like a living thing answering its master after years of silence. Priestesses dropped their torches. Several guards backed away in fear. and every wolf still kneeling on the stone floor struggled visibly against instincts older than memory itself. The moon crown had chosen. That truth struck the hall harder than any blade. "Ilara, don't touch it," Kale said sharply. But she wasn't moving toward the crown. The crown was moving toward her. Silver light poured through the chamber now, illuminating ancient carvings hidden within the black stone walls. Wolves, queens, moon symbols, buried beneath centuries of alpha rule. The kingdom's forgotten history was waking. Lady Seraphine stood abruptly from her seat. "This is madness." Lord Varen's face had gone pale beneath the torchlight. "No," one priestess whispered. "The old throne still lives." Ilara stared at the floating crown in horror. Every instinct told her to run, not because she wanted power, because she understood what power cost. Her mother had died for this bloodline. Kael might die because of it too. The silver crown stopped directly before her, close enough to touch. The marks beneath Ilara's skin burned violently now. Then suddenly, the hall shook. A deep, cracking sound echoed beneath the floor. Everyone froze. Another crack followed, then another. The massive black wolf statue behind the throne dais split down the center. Gasps erupted throughout the chamber as ancient stone collapsed outward, revealing something hidden behind it for centuries. A doorway. No, a sealed chamber. Moonlight spilled from inside despite the fact there were no windows beneath the earth. Cold silver mist rolled slowly across the floor. The priestesses recoiled instantly. The sacred vault. Lord Varen looked horrified. Kyle's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You knew this existed." Varen said nothing, which was answer enough. The hidden chamber had been concealed beneath the Hall of Fangs all along, and somehow, Ilara had opened it, simply by existing. The crown floated toward the doorway now, waiting, calling. The mate bond inside Ilara's chest pulsed painfully. Kyle moved beside her immediately. "You're not going in there alone." His voice remained calm, controlled, but Ilara felt the fear beneath it through the bond. Not fear of the chamber, fear of losing her. The realization hit her harder than it should have. Lord Varen stepped forward sharply. "Your Majesty, she cannot enter the sacred vault." Kale turned slowly toward him. "And why is that?" "Because the relics beneath the throne were sealed after the Moon Sovereigns attempted to reclaim the kingdom." Kale's expression darkened. "You've hidden this from every king before me?" "We protected the throne." "No," Kale said coldly. "You protected your control over it." The tension in the hall sharpened instantly. Several council lords rose defensively. Hands moved toward weapons. Lady Seraphine watched everything with narrowed eyes, calculating faster than anyone else in the room. Ilara suddenly understood something terrifying. This was never only about prophecy. It was about power. If the Moon bloodline returned publicly, the council lost generations of carefully controlled authority over the throne. That made her more dangerous alive than dead. The silver crown pulsed again beside her, waiting, calling, and deep inside herself, Ilara felt something answering it. Kale noticed immediately. His gaze shifted toward her. "What do you feel?" She swallowed carefully. "Like something has been waiting for me." Several priestesses made frightened sounds. Lord Varen's face hardened instantly. "Destroy the crown." Shock swept through the chamber. Even Kale looked at him sharply. Varen stepped forward, voice rising with desperation for the first time. "You do not understand what awakens if she enters that chamber." "Then explain it," Kale demanded. "Silence." The old councilman's jaw tightened. "Finally, the Moon Sovereigns were not merely rulers," he said quietly. "They controlled wolves through blood resonance stronger than Alpha Command itself." The hall fell deathly still. Varen continued. "One queen nearly united every pack beneath her without war. The Alpha bloodlines feared extinction. Ilara stared at him. So they murdered them. They prevented a civil collapse." "No," Kale said coldly. "They slaughtered an entire bloodline." Varen met his gaze heavily. "And now the surviving heir stands beside a king already weakened by curse and unstable succession." His voice lowered. "Can you truly not see the danger?" Kael's wolf surged instantly beneath his skin. The torches dimmed. "The only danger I see," he said softly, "is men who bury truth beneath fear." Before Varen could answer, a scream echoed from outside the hall. Then another. The doors burst open. A wounded guard stumbled inside, covered in blood. "The western gate has fallen." Panic erupted instantly. Another guard rushed in behind him. "Corrupted wolves inside the lower city." "What? How many?" "No one knows." The guard's terrified eyes shifted toward Alara. "They're heading toward the palace." Silence crashed down afterward. Then the ground beneath the hall trembled again. A distant howl echoed through Ashmere Keep. "Deep. Ancien. Wrong." And somewhere beyond the fortress walls, thousands of wolves answered. Kael looked toward the chamber entrance immediately. "Seal the city gates." Lord Varen grabbed his arm sharply. "If the corrupted packs breach Ashmere, while the nobles witness this prophecy awakening, they already have." Kael turned toward Alara again. The silver crown still floated beside her. The hidden chamber remained open, and through the mate bond she felt it clearly now. Kael's fear, not of battle, not of death, of time running out. The curse inside him had begun spreading again. Using his wolf earlier weakened him badly. Alara stepped closer, instinctively. "You shouldn't fight." A faint shadow crossed his face. "And yet I always do." The quiet exhaustion in his voice heard unexpectedly. Before she could answer, Lady Seraphine suddenly moved. Fast. Too fast. She snatched a silver spear from a nearby guard and hurled it directly toward Alara. Gasps exploded through the chamber. Kael reacted instantly. He shifted partially mid-motion, claws erupting as he intercepted the spear barehanded. The silver blade tore through his palm. Blood hit the floor. Black veins exploded violently up his arm. Kael staggered. The curse reacted instantly to silver. Lady Seraphine's face twisted with fury. "She's destroying the kingdom," she screamed. "Look what happens every time she draws breath near the throne." The nobles erupted into shouting again. Some demanded Alara's arrest. Others backed away from her entirely. Fear spread through the hall like wildfire. And Kael nearly collapsed. Alara caught him before he hit the floor. The moment she touched him, the mate bond surged painfully alive between them. She felt everything. His exhaustion, his rage, and beneath it, his desperate struggle not to need her. Kael gripped her wrist tightly. "Alara." His voice had gone rough. "Don't heal me here." But the black veins already spread rapidly toward his throat. If she waited longer, he would die. The realization struck her with horrifying clarity. And worse, the thought of losing him hurt. Far too much. Lord Varen saw it immediately, saw the choice in her eyes. "Don't," he warned sharply. But Alara looked at Kael instead. The king who protected her against his court. The king who stood beside her while the kingdom called her curseborn. The king whose father murdered her mother. And somehow, the man she could no longer bear watching suffer. Alara placed her hand against his chest. Silver moonfire exploded through the Hall of Fangs. The entire chamber screamed. Ancient symbols ignited across the floor, while the hidden chamber beneath the throne roared awake with blinding light. And for one terrifying second, every wolf in Ashmere Keep bowed, including Kael. The Alpha King dropped to one knee before Alara, as silver power surrounded them both. The throne hall watched in stunned silence, because the impossible had just happened. The most feared Alpha in Vare had bowed publicly. To the daughter of the bloodline, his kingdom tried to erase. And somewhere inside the hidden chamber, something ancient opened its eyes. The moment Kael knelt before her, the kingdom changed. No decree announced it. No crown passed hands. But every wolf in the Hall of Fangs felt it in their bones. Power had shifted. Ancien. Unavoidable. Terrifying. Silver moonfire spiraled through the chamber while the Alpha King remained on one knee before Alara, his breathing ragged beneath her hand. The black curse veins beneath his skin recoiled violently from the light pouring through her blood. And for one impossible heartbeat, the curse looked afraid. The nobles stared in frozen disbelief. Several priestesses wept openly. Lord Varen looked as though he had just witnessed the destruction of everything he spent his life protecting. Only Lady Seraphine moved, her beautiful face twisted with fury as she stepped backward toward the council guards. "You see it now," she hissed at the nobles. The prophecy was true. Her voice echoed sharply through the hall. She bends wolves without command. Even the Alpha King kneels to her. Fear spread instantly through the chamber again. The mate bond between Alara and Kael still pulsed visibly beneath their skin, like silver fire threaded through blood. And now no one could pretend it meant nothing. Kael slowly rose to his feet. The movement looked controlled, but Ilara felt the strain through the bond. The curse had weakened again. Not ended, never ended. Just waiting. Kael's golden eyes swept across the hall with lethal calm. "Anyone who speaks another word against her," he said softly, "will answer to me." No one challenged him directly. But fear remained. Fear always found new shapes. A council noble stepped forward carefully. "Your Majesty, the corrupted wolves outside the city." Another tremor interrupted him. The floor beneath the Hall of Fangs cracked violently. Silver light burst upward through ancient stone. The hidden chamber beneath the throne roared louder now, as though something beneath Ashmere itself had awakened fully. The floating moon crown shot suddenly toward the chamber entrance, then vanished inside. A deep howl echoed upward from below. Not human, not entirely wolf either. The sound froze every soul in the hall. Kael immediately moved in front of Ilara again. What was that? One elderly priestess collapsed to her knees, trembling. The Guardian. Lord Varen's face lost all remaining color. "No," he whispered. Ilara frowned. "What Guardian?" The old priestess looked toward her with terrified eyes. "The beast beneath the moon throne." Silence followed. Then Theron spoke quietly from near the rear guards. The old stories claim the moon sovereigns bound an ancient wolf spirit beneath Ashmere. Varen rounded on him furiously. Stories meant to stay buried. Another howl shook the chamber harder this time. Stone dust rained from the ceiling. Outside, screams erupted somewhere within the palace. The corrupted wolves had breached deeper into the fortress. Kael's expression sharpened instantly. "We end this now." Before anyone could stop him, he turned toward the hidden chamber. Ilara grabbed his wrist immediately. "You're weakened. I'm king." That isn't an answer. Their eyes locked. The bond between them pulsed painfully. Kael lowered his voice enough that only she heard. "If that thing beneath the throne wakes fully while the city falls." His jaw tightened. "Thousands die." Ilara hated that he was right. She hated even more that some reckless part of her already intended to follow him. Kael noticed instantly. "No." Ilara blinked. "What?" "You stay here." A faint, disbelieving laugh escaped her despite the terror surrounding them. "You cannot possibly think I'll obey that." Something dangerous flickered briefly in his eyes. Not anger. Admiration, which somehow felt far more dangerous. Before either could argue further, Lady Seraphine suddenly stepped forward again. "You're both blind." The chamber turned toward her sharply. Her silver gown shimmered beneath the moonfire, still leaking from the hidden chamber. "You think this is fate?" she said bitterly. "It's disaster." Kael's voice hardened. "Careful." "No." Seraphine's eyes locked onto Ilara with naked hatred now. For years this kingdom survived because the Alpha Throne united the packs through strength. Her expression twisted. And now one servant girl walks into the palace, and ancient monsters awaken beneath our feet. Ilara met her gaze evenly, despite the fear tightening her chest. "You tried to kill me." Seraphine laughed coldly. "I tried to save the kingdom before Kael lost himself completely." The words struck harder than expected. Kael's jaw tightened instantly. But Seraphine continued. "Do you think I cannot see what's happening?" Her voice lowered sharply. "The bond is consuming him." Silence. Ilara's stomach tightened, because part of her feared the same thing. Seraphine pointed directly toward Kael's chest. "The curse weakens every time she touches him, because it recognizes her blood." Her eyes glittered dangerously. But the prophecy never promised salvation, only change. Kael stepped forward with terrifying calm. That is enough. But Seraphine smiled sadly now. Not cruel. Wounded. I love this kingdom too, Kael. The confession stunned the hall silent. For the first time, Ilara understood the truth. Seraphine wasn't merely jealous. She genuinely believed Alara's existence would destroy Veyrer. And perhaps worse, she might not be entirely wrong. A roar exploded upward from the hidden chamber. This time the entire floor split open. The nobles screamed as ancient stone collapsed inward, revealing a massive staircase spiraling deep beneath the throne. Silver mist poured upward endlessly, and from the darkness below, two enormous glowing eyes opened. Every wolf in the chamber recoiled instinctively. Pure ancient predator, older than kingdoms, older than alpha bloodlines. The guardian had awakened. Kael drew his blade instantly. Ilara behind me. But before she could move, the beast spoke. Not aloud. Inside her mind. Moonborn. Ilara Froze. The voice felt ancient enough to crack mountains. Claim the throne, or watch the false crown drown in blood. Pain exploded behind her eyes. Visions struck instantly. Ashmere burning. Kael bleeding beneath black snow. Corrupted wolves devouring the kingdom walls. And herself, standing beside the moon throne, wearing silver fire like a crown. No, she whispered. Kael turned sharply. What is it? The beast's eyes glowed brighter below. The throne remembers your blood. Ilara staggered backward. The silver mark spread farther up her arms now. The power inside her was growing too quickly. Kael caught her shoulders immediately. Ilara. His voice grounded her slightly. She looked up into his eyes and saw something terrifying there. Not fear of her anymore. Fear for her. The beast spoke to me, she whispered. The entire hall went silent again. Lord Varen looked horrified beyond words. Kael's grip tightened slightly. What did it say? Ilara struggled to breathe steadily. It called me Moonborn. The priestesses immediately dropped to their knees. Theron swore quietly beneath his breath. And deep below the throne, the guardian growled again. Then suddenly, every torch in the Hall of Fangs extinguished. Darkness swallowed the chamber. Only silver moonlight remained. And from the stairway beneath the throne, a gigantic wolf emerged. Its fur shimmered silver white beneath the darkness, like winter moonlight carved into flesh. Ancient runes glowed across its massive body. Its eyes held impossible intelligence. The guardian, the beast, towered over every wolf in the hall. Yet the moment it saw Ilara, it bowed. Complete silence followed. Then chaos exploded. She controls it. The prophecy. Kill her before. Kael's roar silenced the hall instantly. His wolf power slammed through the chamber hard enough to crack pillars. No one spoke again. The guardian remained bowed before Ilara, waiting, recognizing. And Ilara finally understood the terrible truth. This kingdom had not merely hidden her bloodline. It had buried an entire forgotten throne beneath Ashmere itself. And now, both the throne and its beast had awakened for her. The guardian's silver eyes never left Ilara. Neither did the kingdom's. The gigantic wolf bowed at her feet beneath the shattered Hall of Fangs while nobles stood frozen between terror and disbelief. Ancient moonlight spilled upward from the hidden throne chamber below, washing silver across black stone, trembling faces, and drawn weapons. The impossible stood alive before them all. The moon bloodline had returned, and the beast beneath Ashmere recognized its queen. Ilara could barely breathe, not because of the guardian, because the bond between her and Kael had become unbearable now. She felt everything through it, his rage, his fear, and beneath both, his desperate instinct to protect her from the entire room. The realization hit harder than any prophecy. Kael stood slightly in front of her again, blade drawn, black cloak shifting around him, while his wolf power filled the chamber like approaching thunder. No one moved. No one dared. Then Lord Varen finally spoke. His voice sounded older now, tired, broken beneath the weight of truths he could no longer bury. The old throne has awakened. One of the council nobles rounded on him sharply. You knew this would happen? Varen ignored him completely. His eyes remained fixed on the Guardian. When the Alpha Kings seized Ver centuries ago, they could not kill the Moon Sovereigns completely. His voice lowered. So they buried their throne beneath Ashmere and sealed their Guardian in eternal sleep. The silver beast growled softly. The sound shook the chamber walls. Varen swallowed carefully. We believe the bloodline ended with Queen Selene. Ilara stared at him through the silver haze. You murdered children because you were afraid of a prophecy. Varen's expression tightened painfully. We feared another war. No, Kael said coldly. You feared losing power. The accusation landed hard, because everyone knew it was true. The council had ruled beside weak kings for generations. A bloodline capable of commanding wolves beyond alpha authority threatened everything they controlled. Lady Seraphine stepped backward slowly through the chaos, eyes darting toward the nobles gathering fearfully near the exits. They'll never accept her, she whispered. Kyle heard. His expression became dangerously calm. They don't need to. The words stunned the hall silent. Even Ilara looked at him sharply. Kyle turned fully toward the gathered nobles now. The wounded king stood tall despite exhaustion, carving shadows beneath his eyes. Black curse veins still lingered faintly along his throat, but beside Ilara beneath the ancient moonlight, he somehow looked more powerful than he had upon the throne itself. This kingdom, he said quietly, has rotted beneath secrets long before Ilara ever touched these halls. No one interrupted. You fear her blood because your fathers taught you fear. His gaze sharpened across the council. But every corrupted wolf beyond these walls exists because the throne buried truth instead of confronting it. Murmurs spread immediately. Kael stepped closer to the crowd. My father murdered a queen and hunted her child. His voice darkened. And all of you helped bury it. Several nobles lowered their eyes. Lord Varen remained rigid. Kael's wolf surged beneath his skin now, powerful enough to dim the remaining torchlight. No more lies. The declaration rolled through the Hall of Fangs like war drums. And suddenly, a scream echoed from above. Everyone looked upward sharply. A palace guard stumbled into the chamber, bleeding heavily. The lower city is overrun. Panic erupted instantly. The corrupted packs breached the eastern gates. How many? Hundreds? No, the guard gasped. Thousands. Fear exploded across the nobles. The Guardian growled deeply. The sound felt almost warning. Kael turned toward the stairway, leading upward from the hall. Seal the inner fortress. It's too late for that, Theron said grimly. Another roar shook Ashmere. Closer now. The corrupted wolves were inside the palace itself. Ilara suddenly understood. The attacks had never merely targeted Kael. Someone wanted the kingdom unstable before the moon heir awakened publicly. This had been planned. Her gaze snapped toward Lady Seraphine. The noblewoman stood near the rear exit now, eyes cold and calculating. Too calm. Far too calm. Ilara? Kael noticed her expression immediately. She knows something. Seraphine froze, then smiled. Slowly. Beautiful. Cruel. You're finally learning. Kael's eyes darkened instantly. What did you do? The hall fell silent again. Seraphine looked toward him almost sadly. I tried to save you. Answer me. For the first time, genuine emotion cracked through her composure. You think the corrupted wolves appeared naturally? She whispered sharply. You think border packs suddenly became monsters by chance? Cold spread through Ilara's chest. Kael stepped toward Seraphine, with terrifying calm. Speak carefully. Tears shimmered suddenly in Seraphine's eyes. Not weakness. Fure. I watched this kingdom destroy itself for years while the council fed your curse in silence. Her voice shook. I watched them poison your bloodline generation after generation to keep the throne dependent on fear. The chamber froze. Kael's expression changed instantly. What? Seraphine laughed bitterly. The royal curse was never divine punishment. Her eyes shifted toward Lord Varen. It was engineered. Shock detonated through the hall. Every eye turned toward the council. Varen's face had gone completely still. Seraphine pointed directly at him. The council poisoned the Alpha bloodline centuries ago. No, one priestess whispered, to weaken kings enough that no ruler could ever challenge council authority again. Seraphine continued. Every generation inherited the curse. Her eyes returned to Kale. Including you. Kale looked at Varen slowly. Too slowly. The old councilman did not deny it. The silence became answer enough. Rage exploded through the mate bond instantly. Elara staggered slightly from the sheer force of Kyle's fury. The torches reignited black. The Hall of Fangs trembled violently. You poisoned my bloodline, Kyle said softly. The quietness terrified everyone more than shouting would have. Varen finally spoke. The curse kept the throne controlled. You murdered kings. We preserved stability. Kyle moved so quickly no one saw the strike happen. 1 second, Varen stood at the council dais. The next, Kyle had him pinned against shattered stone with claws at his throat. The entire chamber erupted. Guards drew weapons. Priestesses screamed. The guardian snarled thunderously. And through the chaos, Elara felt something horrifying beneath Kale's rage. The curse reacting, growing stronger. The black veins spread instantly beneath his skin. Elara, Theron warned urgently. Kale's wolf was losing control. Varen stared at the king without flinching, even with claws against his throat. If you kill me now, he rasped. The kingdom tears itself apart before dawn. Kale's claws pressed deeper. I should have done this years ago. The black veins reached his jaw now. His breathing roughened dangerously. The curse fed on rage, fed on violence, fed on the king himself. Elara, Theron said sharply. He can't stop it. The bond pulsed violently. Kyle was drowning in it. Without thinking, Elara ran toward him. Kyle. He didn't respond. Golden eyes had begun darkening toward black. The room filled with raw alpha power. Several wolves collapsed to their knees, choking beneath it. Elara grabbed his face with both hands. Kyle. The silver marks across her skin ignited instantly. Moonlight burst through the chamber. Kyle froze beneath her touch. For one terrible heartbeat, the king and the beast inside him fought visibly against each other. Then, slowly, his breathing steadied. The black veins retreated slightly, and Kale looked at her, really looked at her. The rage in his eyes broke apart beneath something deeper. Need, relief, terrifying devotion. He no longer knew how to hide. The entire Hall of Fangs watched in silence, as the Alpha King leaned unconsciously into her touch. And Elara realized everyone could see it now. He loved her, perhaps not softly, not safely, but completely enough to burn kingdoms for her. Kale seemed to realize it too. His expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Fear, not of her, of what loving her might cost. Then suddenly the Guardian lifted its massive head toward the ceiling and roared. A roar of warning. The walls above them exploded inward. Corrupted wolves poured into the Hall of Fangs like a living nightmare, and leading them, a towering black creature with glowing crimson eyes. Not fully wolf anymore, not fully human. Something twisted beyond both. The nobles screamed. Theron drew his blade instantly. Kyle stepped in front of Elara without hesitation. But the monstrous wolf only stared at her, then smiled. A human smile. You finally woke the throne, it growled. Elara's blood turned cold, because she recognized the voice. King Aldrich, Kale's dead father. For one impossible second, the world stopped breathing. The monstrous black wolf, standing amidst the ruined Hall of Fangs, wore the face of death itself. Crimson eyes glowed beneath torn flesh, while black veins crawled across its massive body like living shadows. Corrupted wolves flooded around it in snarling waves, their bodies twisted by the same sickness consuming the royal curse. And at the center of that nightmare, the dead king smiled at his son, Kyle. The creature growled softly. You survived longer than expected. Shock shattered across the chamber. Several nobles stumbled backward in horror. Priestesses began praying frantically. Theron's face had gone pale beneath old battle scars. Only Kale remained perfectly still. Too still. Ilara felt it instantly through the bond. Not fear. Something worse. The deep, buried wound of a son who had spent years trying not to become his father. "You're dead," Kale said quietly. The creature laughed. A wet, broken sound. Death is a gentle thing, compared to what your council created. Lord Varen looked horrified beyond words now. "No," he whispered. "The body was burned." "Bodies burn," Aldrich snarled. "Curses survive." The corrupted wolves spread outward through the hall, surrounding nobles and guards alike. Yet none attacked immediately. They waited, obeying. Ilara realized with horror that the creatures answered directly to Aldrich. The former king's crimson gaze shifted toward her slowly, and the moment he saw the silver marks across her skin, he smiled wider. "So," he whispered, "the Moon bloodline truly endured." Kale stepped in front of her instantly. The movement was automatic now, protective, down to instinct. Aldrich noticed. His expression darkened. "You kneel for her already." Kale's voice became lethal calm. "You murdered her mother. I saved the throne. You butchered innocent children. I prevented wolves from bowing to another moon tyrant." The guardian behind Ilara growled thunderously. Ancient hatred filled the chamber instantly. Aldrich's crimson eyes flicked briefly toward the massive silver beast. "Still protecting your queens after all these centuries?" he mocked. The guardian's claws cracked the stone floor. Ilara suddenly understood. This wasn't merely political history. The hatred between the Alpha bloodline and the Moon sovereigns ran ancient enough to poison generations. And now, she stood directly in the center of it. Aldrich stepped forward slowly. The corrupted wolves moved with him like living shadows. "You want truth, Kyle?" His monstrous voice echoed through the ruined hall. "Your council poisoned the Alpha line because they feared weak kings." He smiled bitterly. "But I became something stronger." "No," Kale said coldly. "You became a monster. Monsters survive." The black creature's gaze shifted toward Ilara again. "And now your little moon heir will decide what survives next." The mate bond pulsed painfully. Ilara could feel Kale's fury struggling beneath control again. The curse reacted every time Aldrich spoke. Because beneath the rage, Kyle still carried the wound of wanting his father's approval once. Aldrich noticed that too. "You hate me," the dead king murmured. "Yet you still became exactly what I forged." Kyle's claws emerged instantly. Black veins surged beneath his skin. Enough. The chamber trembled from the force of his wolf. But Aldrich only laughed. "You think protecting her makes you different?" Crimson eyes flicked toward Ilara. "The moment the packs fear her enough, you'll be forced to choose your throne or your mate." Silence crashed through the hall. The word mate echoed heavily through every noble present. Kale didn't deny it. Neither did Ilara. Because the bond blazing visibly between their skin already answered for them. Aldrich smiled cruelly. "There it is." His gaze sharpened toward his son. "The weakness that destroys kings." Kyle moved first. With a roar powerful enough to shake the hall, he lunged at his father. The clash exploded through the chamber violently. Black claws met corrupted flesh as father and son crashed through broken pillars. Wolves screamed. Nobles fled. Guards rushed forward, only to be thrown backward by raw alpha force erupting from both monsters. Kale fought like fury given flesh, but Aldrich fought like something already dead. The corrupted king tore through stone with impossible strength, while black poison spread from every wound across his body. And every time Kale struck him, the curse inside Kale answered. Growing. Feeding. Ilara saw it instantly. "This is wrong," she whispered. Theron fought beside the remaining guards, while corrupted wolves flooded the chamber endlessly. "What?" "The curse." Ilara stared at the battle in horror. "Aldrich isn't controlling it." Her chest tightened. "The curse is controlling him." The realization hit hard. The royal curse had evolved beyond poison. It consumed, transformed, turned wolves into living vessels for rage and hunger. And if Kyle lost himself completely, he would become the same thing. Aldrich slammed Kale through the shattered council dais. Stone exploded. The Alpha King staggered up instantly despite blood pouring from his side. But the black veins had spread across half his throat now. Too fast. Far too fast. "Ilara!" Theron shouted desperately. She already knew. Kale could not win this fight alone. Not anymore. The Guardian stepped beside her then. Massive silver fur glowing beneath moonlight. Ancient eyes watching her carefully. Moonborn. The beast's voice echoed inside her mind. The throne waits. Ilara looked toward the hidden chamber beneath Ashmere. Silver light still poured upward from the ancient stairway, and suddenly she understood. The moon throne was not merely ceremonial. It was power. Old power. Power the Alpha Kings feared enough to bury alive. Aldrich hurled Kale across the hall again. The dead king roared triumphantly. "You cannot save him." Kyle tried rising. Failed. Blood spread across the floor beneath him, while the curse consumed more of his body. The bond between him and Ilara pulsed painfully weak now. Fear sliced through her chest instantly. Not fear for herself. Fear of losing him. That realization shattered the last walls inside her. Before she could stop herself, Ilara ran toward the hidden stairway. "Protect her," Theron roared. The Guardian moved instantly beside her, while corrupted wolves lunged from every direction. Silver claws tore through them brutally as Ilara descended deeper beneath Ashmere Keep. The sounds of battle faded above, then disappeared entirely. The hidden chamber below the throne looked ancient, beyond imagination. Silver fire burned without fuel along towering pillars carved from white stone. Moon symbols covered the walls. Ancient wolf banners hung untouched by time itself. And at the center, the moon throne waited. Not black like the Alpha throne above. Silver. Beautiful. Terrible. The moment Ilara approached, the marks across her skin blazed violently. Visions exploded through her mind. Queens crowned beneath moonlight. Wolves bowing willingly, instead of through fear. Kings and queens ruling together once, before betrayal split the bloodlines apart. Then her mother, Queen Selene, standing before the throne holding infant Ilara in trembling arms. "If my daughter survives," Selene whispered tearfully, "let her end this curse forever." The vision shattered. Ilara collapsed briefly to one knee, breathing hard. Above her, another roar shook the palace. Kyle, dying. The bond between them weakened again. The Guardian lowered its massive head beside her. "Claim the throne, Moonborn." Ilara stared at the silver seat. Fear gripped her completely now, because deep inside herself, she finally understood the truth. If she accepted the throne, there would be no returning to the girl she once was. No hiding, no invisibility, no servant shadows. She would become something the kingdom feared forever. But Kyle was dying, and despite every reason she should have hated him, she loved him too much to let him fall alone. Ilara rose slowly, then stepped toward the moon throne. Above the chamber, the palace shook violently as the final battle for Ashmere began. And far above, Kyle screamed her name. Kyle's scream echoed through the stone above like the sound of a kingdom breaking apart. Ilara. The mate bond ripped through her chest so violently she nearly collapsed before the moon throne. Pain flooded the connection between them. Blood, fury, desperation, the terrible edge between life and death. Kyle was losing. No, he was losing himself. Above the hidden chamber, Ashmere Keep shook beneath war. Corrupted wolves tore through palace halls, while nobles fled through burning corridors. The Guardian battled beside the remaining royal soldiers. Theron fought to hold the Hall of Fangs. And at the center of the storm, Kale Draven bled alone against the monster his father had become. Ilara turned toward the silver throne again. Moonlight poured across it endlessly, from no visible source, illuminating ancient carvings spiraling along its arms. Wolves beneath crescent moons. Queens holding silver fire. Kings kneeling beside them, not beneath them. Beside them. The realization struck her hard. The old throne had never been built upon domination. It had been built upon balance. The Alpha Kings destroyed that balance centuries ago, and now the curse born from fear threatened to consume everything. The Guardian's ancient voice echoed inside her mind once more. The throne does not grant power, Moonborn. It remembers it. Alara's hands trembled. I don't know how. You already do. The silver marks along her skin pulsed brighter. Memories flooded her again. Not visions this time. Instinct. Ancient blood memory. Healing hands. Glowing beneath moonlight. Wolves gathering willingly around silver queens. Not control. Connection. Then suddenly another memory surfaced. Her mother kneeling before the moon throne years ago, whispering through tears. One day the blood must choose mercy over fear. Elara inhalet shakile. Then stepped toward the throne. The moment she touched it, silver light exploded through the chamber. The ancient symbols along the walls ignited instantly, while moonfire spiraled violently around her body. Power surged through her blood hard enough to steal breath from her lungs. Not painful, not gentle either. Immense. Alive. The throne recognized her completely. And above Ashmere Keep, every wolf in the kingdom howled. Kyle heard it immediately, even half buried beneath rubble and blood. Fighting the monstrous remains of his father in the ruined Hall of Fangs, he felt the exact moment Alara claimed the throne. The bond between them erupted awake like wildfire. Silver light tore through the cursed veins beneath his skin. Aldrich staggered backward in shock. No. Kale dropped to one knee, breathing hard as visions flooded his mind. Alara, standing crowned in moonlight. Ancient wolves bowing around her. And himself, not beneath her, beside her. The realization struck like lightning. The prophecy had been wrong all along. The moon heir was never meant to destroy the throne. She was meant to save what the throne had once been before fear corrupted it. Aldrich roared furiously. You let her claim it. The dead king lunged again. Kale met him with brutal force despite exhaustion shredding through his body. Claws collided violently while black corruption spread across the shattered hall. But this time something had changed. The curse inside Kale no longer moved uncontested. Silver light pulsed through his veins alongside darkness. Alara's power. The mate bond. The throne itself. Aldrich saw it instantly. Panic flickered across his monstrous face for the first time. She's cleansing you. Kael's eyes darkened dangerously. She's saving me. The words shook the hall silent. Even now. Even bleeding. And dying. Kael chose her openly. Aldrich roared in fury and slammed Kale backward through a broken pillar. Stone exploded. Black veins surged violently across Kale's throat again. The curse resisted desperately now, almost alive with terror. Then, moonlight burst through the ruined ceiling. The entire Hall of Fangs froze. Silver fire spiraled downward from above, flooding the chamber with ancient power. And from the hidden stairway beneath the throne, Elada emerged. The nobles gasped. Several priestesses immediately fell prostrate against the floor, because the servant girl was gone. Alara walked through the ruined hall wrapped in silver moonfire, ancient symbols glowing beneath her skin like living starlight. Her dark hair moved weightlessly around her shoulders, while the moon crown rested above her brow, not heavy gold like mortal kings wore, but silver woven from light itself. The guardian followed behind her, like a living god, and every wolf in Ashmere bowed. Every single one, except Kale. Not because he resisted. Because the bond between them no longer demanded kneeling. It demanded choice. Alara's eyes found his instantly. Pain tightened her chest at the sight of him. Blood covered his skin. The curse had spread frighteningly far. And yet, when Kale looked at her, wonder broke across his face. Not fear, not shame. Wunder, like some wounded part of him, had finally seen hope for the first time in years. Aldrich snarled violently. You dare wear that crown? Alara turned toward him slowly, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she felt no fear, only grief. You destroyed your own kingdom to keep power. I protected wolves from moon tyranny. No, Ilara said quietly. You protected fear. Silver power filled the hall. The corrupted wolves surrounding Aldrich whimpered uneasily now. The dead king laughed bitterly. You think mercy will save this world? Ilara's gaze sharpened. No. Her voice lowered softly. But perhaps it can stop destroying it. Aldrich lunged at her. Kale moved instantly. But Ilara raised one hand first. Silver moonfire erupted through the hall. The force hit Aldrich like a tidal wave. The monstrous king crashed backward across shattered stone as ancient runes ignited beneath him. The corrupted wolves screamed in agony as silver light spread through the chamber like dawn breaking across endless darkness. The curse recoiled, fought, screamed, because for the first time in centuries, something stronger opposed it. Aldrich struggled violently against the silver fire trapping him. You cannot erase what men truly are, he roared. Ilara stepped toward him slowly. Moonlight surrounded her completely now. No, she whispered sadly. But I can stop your hatred from poisoning another generation. Then she placed her hand against the corrupted king's chest. The entire hall exploded with light. Aldrich screamed, not in rage, in pain, real pain. And suddenly Ilara saw everything. The council poisoning him young, the curse twisting his mind year after year, fear consuming him until he no longer knew where the monster ended, and the king began. Tears burned Ilara's eyes unexpectedly. Aldrich had not been born evil. He had been consumed, just like Kale nearly was. The realization nearly broke her heart. Silver light spread deeper into the corruption. The black veins shattered apart beneath her touch. Aldrich gasped violently. Then, slowly, the monster began to disappear. The corrupted flesh dissolved into ash beneath moonfire, while the hall watched in stunned silence. For one brief moment, the dead king looked human again. Tired, old, free. Aldrich looked toward Kale. Real emotion crossed his face for the first time in decades. I am sorry, he whispered. Then he turned to ash in Ilara's hands. Silence consumed the Hall of Fangs afterward. The corrupted wolves collapsed across the chamber lifelessly. The curse vanished from the air, like smoke carried away by wind. And Kale fell. The remaining curse veins exploded violently across his body as the last remnants fought desperately to survive inside him. Ilara, Theron shouted. She ran instantly. Kale hit the stone floor hard enough to crack it beneath him, while black corruption spread toward his heart faster than ever before. The curse was dying, which meant it was killing him with it. Ilara dropped beside him, trembling. No. Kale's golden eyes found hers weakly. The terrifying Alpha King of Ver looked exhausted now. Human. Beautifully breakable. His blood stained her hands as she held him. Ilara. His voice barely remained steady. Listen to me. No. You have to. I won't let you die. A faint smile touched his mouth despite the agony. You already gave me more life than I deserved. Tears finally escaped her eyes. For years, she survived by enduring quietly. But the thought of losing him shattered every wall inside her. Kale lifted one shaking hand against her face. The mate bond pulsed weakly between them. Then softly, painfully, honestly, I love you. The confession silenced the world. No throne, no court, no politics, only truth. Ilara broke completely, and the moonfire around her exploded brighter than the sun. The moonfire erupted through Ashmere Keep, like the birth of a new dawn. Silver light flooded every corridor, every tower, every blood-stained stone where wolves had fallen during the long night of war. The remaining corruption inside the palace screamed as it burned away beneath the ancient power pouring from Ilara's soul. And at the center of that storm, Kale lay dying in her arms. The black veins had reached his heart. Ilara could feel it, through the mate bond. The curse was tearing itself apart inside him now, fighting desperately to survive as the old poison burned away. Every heartbeat cost him pain. Every breath sounded weaker than the last. But his eyes never left hers. Even now, even at the edge of death, He looked at her like she was the only thing anchoring him to the world. Ilara pressed trembling hands against his chest. "No," she whispered through tears. "No, you don't get to leave me after all this." A faint shadow of amusement crossed Kael's face despite the agony. That almost sounded like an order. Her breath broke into something halfway between a sob and a laugh. The Hall of Fangs remained utterly silent around them. Noble, warriors, priestesses. Every wolf in the kingdom watched the moon heir kneeling beside the dying Alpha King, and no one dared interrupt. Because for the first time in centuries, the throne of Vare no longer belonged to fear. Ilara lowered her forehead against Kael's. The mate bond flickered weakly between them now. Fragile, failing. Panic clawed through her chest. The guardian stepped closer, silently behind her. Ancient silver eyes watched Kael carefully. The king carries the last poison. Ilara looked upward sharply. Can it be removed? Not by force. Hope shattered instantly. Then how? The guardian lowered its massive head. By choice. Ilara stared at the ancient beast in confusion. Then suddenly she understood. The curse had always fed on control. Fear. Dominance. Violence. Everything the Alpha Kings built their throne upon. It could not survive sacrifice. Mercy. Love. Freely chosen. Tears burned down her face as realization struck fully. The throne had never needed stronger kings. It needed different ones. Ilara looked down at Kael again. He was fading. She could feel pieces of him slipping through the bond already. Without thinking, she cupped his face gently. "Stay with me." Kael's eyes softened painfully. "If I stay," his breathing roughened. "The kingdom may never accept you. I don't care. You should." "No," Ilara whispered fiercely. "I spent my whole life surviving what people believed about me." Her voice shook. "I won't lose you because they're afraid." Something broke in Kael's expression then. Years of isolation, control, loneliness. He looked at her like no one had ever fought to keep him before, and perhaps no one truly had. The terrifying Alpha King had spent his entire life being useful to others, never loved enough to be vulnerable safely. Ilara bent closer until their foreheads touched. "You are not your father." Kael closed his eyes briefly. Pain crossed his face. "You saw what he became." "Yes." Her fingers tightened slightly against his skin. "And I saw what you chose not to become." Silence fell softly around them. Then, Ilara kissed him. The entire Hall of Fangs inhaled sharply, but the kiss carried no court performance. No politics. Only desperate truth. The mate bond exploded awake. Silver moonfire surged between them violently as Kael grabbed her waist instinctively, pulling her closer despite his weakening strength. The curse beneath his skin reacted instantly, black veins writhing desperately against the light flooding through him. Then something impossible happened. The darkness stopped fighting. Slowly, the black veins dissolved beneath silver light, like shadows surrendering to dawn. Kael gasped sharply against her lips. The mate bond blazed brighter than ever before, not consuming, balancing. The hall trembled softly. Ancient wolf carvings across the walls began glowing, and one by one, every remaining trace of corruption vanished from Kael's body completely. Silence followed, heavy, disbelieving. Ilara pulled back just enough to stare at him. The black veins were gone, completely gone. Kael looked stunned. For the first time since she met him, no pain shadowed his eyes. The curse was dead. A priestess collapsed to her knees, weeping. "The blood curse," she whispered. "Broken." Shock rippled across the chamber, because no king in Vare's history had ever survived it. Kael slowly sat upright, still weak, still bloodied, but alive and free. The realization hit the hall like thunder. Lord Varen stared openly now, the weight of decades crushing visibly across his face. The old councilman looked toward Ilara, then toward Kael. Finally, slowly, her Knelt. Gasps echoed instantly through the nobles, because Varen had never bowed to anyone willingly in his life. One by one, the others followed. Council lords, priestesses, Warriors. Rival alphas. The entire Hall of Fangs lowered itself before the throne they once buried beneath Ashmere. Not out of fear. Recognition. Ilara looked around the hall in stunned silence. All her life she had been invisible. An oath-bound servant no one truly saw. And now the kingdom itself knelt before her. The emotional weight of it nearly crushed her. Kael rose slowly beside her. The movement drew every eye in the chamber instantly. For one terrible heartbeat, Ilara feared what came next. Would he choose the throne above her now that the curse was gone? Would the kingdom force him to? Kael looked across the kneeling court, then toward Ilara, and without hesitation, the Alpha King of Ver knelt beside her. The hall gasped again. Kael took her trembling hand openly before the entire kingdom. No fear, no denial, only certainty. My father built this throne upon blood and fear, he said quietly. I will not. His gaze never left Ilara's. She is not my weakness. The mate bond pulsed warmly between them. She is the reason this kingdom still stands. Tears filled Ilara's eyes again. Before she could stop them, Kael rose afterward and helped her gently to her feet. Not beneath him, beside him, exactly where the ancient throne intended her to stand all along. Outside Ashmere Keep, dawn finally broke beyond the storm clouds. For the first time in years, wolves across the kingdom stopped howling in fear. Weeks later, the kingdom of Ver gathered beneath silver banners instead of black ones. The old council laws burned publicly in the palace square. The prison cells beneath Ashmere were opened. Servants bound by blood oaths were freed. The surviving corrupted wolves were granted mercy instead of execution. And, in the great throne hall, where Ilara had once knelt in chains, a new throne stood beside Kael's. Not beneath it. Never beneath it. The kingdom watched carefully as Ilara entered wearing silver moonfire woven into royal silk. The moon crown rested lightly against her dark hair, while ancient wolves carved into the palace walls glowed softly in recognition. No one called her servant anymore. No one dared call her curseborn. They called her what she truly was, queen. But the moment that mattered most to Ilara happened quietly. Not before crowds, not during ceremonies. Late that night, after the kingdom finally slept, she stood alone on the palace balcony, overlooking the endless forests below Ashmere. Winter winds curled through her hair softly. Then familiar footsteps approached behind her. Kael. She felt him before he spoke now. The bond between them had become steady warmth instead of painful fire. He stepped beside her silently, dressed simply in black, no crown upon his head, only himself. For a while neither spoke. The silence between them no longer hurt. Kael finally glanced toward her. You're thinking too loudly. A soft laugh escaped her. You can hear thoughts now? No. His mouth curved faintly. Only yours. Ilara looked out toward the moonlit forests. I still don't know if I deserve any of this. Kael turned fully toward her then. The fierce king feared by all Ver looked at her with something infinitely softer now. You walked into fire for people who chained you, he said quietly. You saved a kingdom that feared you. His hand brushed gently against hers. If anyone deserves this throne, it's you. Emotion tightened her throat again. Kael lifted her hand slowly and pressed a kiss against the glowing silver mark beneath her wrist. Not possession. Devotion. You saved me, he whispered. Ilara shook her head softly. No. Her eyes met his beneath the moonlight. We saved each other. For once, the Alpha King had no argument against that. Kael pulled her gently into his arms, while moonlight covered Ashmere Keep in silver peace. And somewhere deep beneath the palace, the ancient guardian finally slept again. Not because the throne was hidden, because at last, it no longer needed to be. Dawn came slowly to Greyhaven. Not peaceful dawn, the kind born after bloodshed. Smoke still curled from shattered palace towers, while snow drifted silently across burned courtyards, littered with broken weapons and abandoned banners. Wolves moved through the capital carefully now, speaking in hushed voices as if afraid the kingdom itself might crack beneath them if they spoke too loudly. By sunrise, every northern territory already knew. The Covenant Queen had returned, and the dead wolves bowed to her. Inside the throne hall, servants worked carefully around the destruction left behind by battle. Blood was scrubbed from marble floors. Fallen banners were replaced. Bodies carried away beneath white funeral cloths. But no one touched the shattered moon altar. Not anymore. People avoided looking at it directly, because now they understood what had happened there. Truth had awakened. Lyra stood alone beside the broken palace balcony overlooking the capital below. Cold winter air drifted through her dark hair, while silver dawn painted the mountains pale beneath the horizon. The city felt different now, not safer. Watching, thousands of wolves below waited to see what kind of queen she would become. The thought made her chest tighten painfully. Queen. Even now the word felt stolen somehow, like clothing belonging to someone else. Footsteps approached quietly behind her. Coil. She recognized his presence before he spoke now. Not through sound. Through the bond. Warmth spread beneath her ribs the moment he entered the balcony chamber. "You should be resting," he said softly. Lyra looked back at him. The sight still unsettled her. The Alpha King no longer carried the hollow exhaustion she first noticed during the trials. His wolf moved strongly beneath his skin now, alive and alert. But he looked tired in another way, emotionally raw, as if the walls holding him together for years had cracked open all at once. His side remained bandaged beneath black royal clothing, though Lyra could feel faint pain lingering through the bond. "You're still injured," she said quietly. Kyle leaned one shoulder against the stone archway. "So are you." Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable. Careful. Ever since the throne hall, everything between them felt sharper, somehow. More honest, more dangerous. The mate bond had stripped away too many lies. Lyra turned back toward the city below. "They're afraid of me." Kale walked beside her slowly. "Yes." The honesty almost made her smile. "You're not supposed to comfort me?" "No." His silver eyes remained on the kingdom beyond the balcony. "You should know the truth of what you face." Lyra studied him quietly. Most kings would have lied, promised loyalty, promised devotion. Kale offered reality instead. Strangely, that comforted her more. "The nobles will never fully accept me," she murmured. "Some won't. And the temple?" Kale's expression darkened slightly. "The Moon Temple lost authority overnight. That makes desperate people dangerous." Lyra looked down at the snow-covered streets. Already she could feel the kingdom dividing beneath her. Some wolves worshipping her, some fearing her, some waiting for weakness. The crown did not end loneliness. It transformed it. Kale studied her face carefully. "You regret staying?" Lyra hesitated. "No." That answer surprised both of them. Because despite everything, the chains, the fear, the blood, somewhere between the dead wolves and the buried throne, Greyhaven had become the first place she truly existed instead of merely surviving. Kyle stepped closer beside her. The cold wind moved softly through the silence between them. Then quietly he asked, "What are you afraid of now?" The question caught her off guard. Lyra looked at him slowly. Not the Alpha King, not the feared ruler. Just Kale, a man carrying scars too heavy to hide anymore. "I'm afraid," she whispered, "that everyone kneeling yesterday only saw power." His gaze sharpened slightly. "And? What happens when they realize I'm still just," she swallowed hard, "me?" The words hurt more than she intended, because beneath the covenant and throne and ancient bloodline, she still remembered the girl standing alone during village winters, while everyone avoided touching her shadow. Kyle went quiet for a long moment. Then he said something she never expected. "I'm afraid too." Lyra blinked softly. "You?" A faint, humorless smile crossed his face. "You think becoming king erased fear?" "No. It deepened it." She understood that now. Kale looked toward the horizon beyond the mountains. "I spent years believing strength meant enduring everything alone." His voice lowered slightly. "Now the kingdom watches to see whether I become my father." Lyra's chest tightened painfully. The fear beneath his words felt real through the bond. Not political fear. Personal. Kyle feared becoming cruel more than he feared dying. That realization made her heart ache. "You're nothing like him," she said quietly. His silver eyes shifted toward her. "You can't know that." "Yes," Lyra answered softly. "I can. Because monsters did not kneel willingly. Monsters did not bleed protecting people. Monsters did not look at wounded girls like they were something worth saving." Kyle stared at her for one long moment. Then slowly, very slowly, he reached toward her face. Lyra's breath caught. His fingers brushed a loose strand of hair away from her cheek carefully, almost hesitantly, as if touching her still felt dangerous, despite the bond. The warmth of his hand against her skin sent fire through her chest. Kale noticed. Of course he noticed. The bond carried everything now. Her pulse, her fear, the way her breathing changed when he touched her. His expression darkened slightly. Not cold. Wanting. The realization hit both of them at once, and suddenly the air between them became far too small. A knock shattered the moment. Kale stepped back immediately. The loss of warmth felt strangely painful. Commander Rowan entered the balcony chamber quickly. Majestu. Kyle's composure returned instantly like armor sliding back into place. What happened? Rovan bovet onse. A delegation arrived from the southern kingdoms. Lyra frowned. So soon. They heard about the Covenant awakening. Of course they had. News traveled faster than ravens, when fear carried it. Rowan's expression tightened slightly. They're demanding to see the Queen. Silence settled heavily again. Not because of politics. Because this was real now. The outside kingdoms would come next. The alliances. The threats. The endless games surrounding crowns. Kale looked toward Lyra carefully. "You don't have to face them today." The offer startled her. "You would delay foreign delegations for me? I would burn the southern treaties entirely, if necessary." Rowan looked exhausted hearing that. Lyra almost laughed, despite herself. Kyle's expression softened slightly seeing it. Only slightly, but enough. Then Rowan cleared his throat carefully. "There's another matter." Kyle immediately noticed the hesitation. "What?" The burial fields outside Greyhaven. The bond tightened sharply beneath Lyra's ribs. "The spirit wolves?" she asked quietly. Rowan nodded. They vanished at dawn. Relief flickered through the room. Then Rowan added, "All except one." Silence. Kale's silver eyes narrowed. "Show us." The burial fields stretched beyond the northern cliffs, beneath layers of untouched snow. Ancient grave markers covered the hills surrounding Greyhaven, many so old their names had worn away completely. And standing alone among them, waited the massive spirit wolf from beneath the crypt. The first guardian. Moonlight still clung faintly to its silver fur despite the rising sun. The creature watched Lyra silently as she approached through the snow beside Kael. Then slowly, the giant wolf bowed, not to the king, to her. Lyra stopped before it quietly. "What happens now?" The spirit's ancient silver eyes shifted briefly toward Kael, then back to her. "The kingdom remembers." Its voice echoed gently inside her mind now, instead of painfully. But memory alone cannot heal what fear created. Lyra looked across the burial fields. "How do I fix any of this?" The spirit wolf moved closer slowly. "You do not rule the dead through power, little queen." The massive creature lowered its head beside hers. "You rule by teaching the living not to create more ghosts." Tears burned suddenly behind Lyra's eyes. Because after all, the blood and fear and revenge, that was the real burden of the Covenant. Not commanding spirits, preventing kingdoms from becoming graveyards. The spirit wolf stepped backward. Its body had already begun fading into silver mist beneath the dawn. Kael looked toward it carefully. "Will we see you again?" The spirit wolf's ancient gaze rested on him for one long moment. "Be worthy of her." Then the first guardian dissolved completely into drifting moonlight. Gone. Only silence remained over the burial fields. Cold wind moved softly through the snow. Lyra stood staring at the empty place where the spirit vanished. Then suddenly, warm fingers closed around hers. Kyle. She looked up slowly. The Alpha King's silver eyes held hers steadily now. No throne between them. No court. No ghosts. Just truth. You asked what happens when people realize you're still yourself, he said quietly. Lyra's pulse quickened. Kyle stepped closer. Then they'll finally understand why the kingdom chose you. The words shattered the last lonely part of her. And standing together beneath the winter dawn, surrounded by the graves of forgotten wolves, Lyra realized something extraordinary. For the first time in her life, she was no longer surviving alone.